Welcome back to Crowned Black Heroes, where we uncover the extraordinary stories of resilience and triumph that history tried to bury. Today, I'm going to tell you about a woman who was born into slavery with nothing, not even her own name. A woman who was forced to walk 1,700 miles across the American frontier, barefoot, with a baby strapped to her back, herding cattle and delivering babies on the trail. A woman who learned the healing arts from other enslaved women and became so skilled at delivering babies and treating illnesses that she saved hundreds of lives. And then, after winning her freedom in a dramatic courtroom battle, this woman did something absolutely extraordinary. She became one of the wealthiest landowners in Los Angeles, accumulating a fortune worth millions in today's money. She founded the first black church in Los Angeles. She became known as the mother of charity to the entire city, feeding the hungry, visiting prisoners, caring for the sick. Regardless of their race, this woman went from being property, from being legally considered less than human, to becoming one of the most respected and influential people in an entire city. Her name was Biddy Mason, and her story is so incredible, so inspiring, and so important that it should be taught in every school in America. But it isn't. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we bring you these powerful untold stories every single week. And if this story moves you, if it makes you want to stand up and celebrate this remarkable woman's life, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think. Now, let me tell you about Biddy Mason, the slave who became a healer, millionaire, and a legend. We begin on August 15th, 1818, in Hancock County, Georgia, deep in the plantation South. A baby girl is born into slavery. We don't know her mother's name. We don't know if her father was an enslaved man or the white plantation owner who claimed ownership of her mother's body as well as her labor. We know almost nothing about her first years because enslaved people's lives were not considered worth documenting. The child is given the name Bridget, which will eventually be shortened to Biddy, but we don't know who named her or why. What we do know is that from the moment of her birth, Biddy is property. She belongs to a white family. She can be sold at any moment. She has no legal rights, no claim to her own life or body or future. This is the reality of slavery, not the sanitized version sometimes presented, but the actual brutal truth that human beings were treated as objects, as tools, as less than human. Biddy grows up working on the plantation, doing whatever labor enslaved children are forced to do. She never learns to read or write because teaching enslaved people is illegal in most southern states. Educated slaves are considered dangerous because education might give them ideas about freedom, about rights, about their own humanity. But Biddy learns other things, crucial things that will save her life and the lives of countless others. She learns healing arts from older enslaved women who know how to use herbs and plants to treat illnesses and injuries. She learns midwifery, the skill of helping women through pregnancy and childbirth. In a world without modern medicine, without hospitals, without trained doctors who will treat enslaved people, these skills are essential. Enslaved women give birth without medical assistance, often while working in the fields. Complications that would be easily treatable today are death sentences in the 1830s and 40s. A skilled midwife who knows how to position a baby, how to stop bleeding, how to identify and address problems, is literally the difference between life and death. Biddy becomes exceptional at this work. She has steady hands, a calm presence, and an instinctive understanding of the human body. She assists in births, and somehow, miraculously, most of her mothers and babies survive. This is extraordinary because infant and maternal mortality rates in the 19th century are horrific, especially for enslaved women who receive no medical care and are often forced back to work immediately after giving birth. Biddy's reputation grows. She's known as someone who can help, who can bring a baby safely into the world, who can treat fevers and infections with herbs and knowledge passed down through generations of African and African American healers. But Biddy's life changes dramatically when she's about 18 years old. She's sold or transferred to Robert Marion Smith, a cotton planter. Smith is a slaveholder in Mississippi, and Biddy becomes part of his household. Over the next years, Biddy has 3 daughters. Though the circumstances of their conception are not documented, it's entirely possible that Robert Smith, or another white man, is the father, because enslaved women have no legal protection from rape. Regardless of how they're conceived, Biddy's 3 daughters, Ellen, Anne, and Harriet, become the center of her universe. Everything Biddy does from this point forward is shaped by her determination to protect her children and eventually secure their freedom. In 1847, Robert Smith converts to Mormonism, joining the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Mormon Church at this time is facing persecution in the Midwest and is planning a massive migration to the West, to Utah Territory, where they hope to establish their own religious community free from interference. Smith decides to join the migration, and he's taking his enslaved people with him. This includes Biddy and her 3 daughters. In 1848, when Biddy is 30 years old, the journey begins. Robert Smith organizes a wagon train heading west. But here's the thing that makes this journey particularly brutal for Biddy. She's not riding in a wagon. She's walking for 1,700 miles from Mississippi through Missouri and Iowa and Nebraska and Wyoming and Utah. Biddy Mason walks. She's barefoot for much of the journey. She's carrying her youngest daughter on her back. She's herding cattle as she walks because Smith has brought livestock, and the enslaved people are responsible for managing the animals. She's cooking meals for the Smith family at the end of each day's march. And incredibly, impossibly, she's delivering babies because women on the wagon train, both white and black, are giving birth during this months-long journey. And Biddy is the midwife they call when labor begins. Think about what this means. Biddy is walking 20 to 30 miles per day in all weather. Her feet are bleeding. Her body is exhausted. She's caring for her own children while managing cattle and cooking. And when a woman goes into labor in a wagon in the middle of the prairie with no medical facilities, no clean water, no equipment, Biddy is the one who helps deliver that baby safely. The journey takes approximately 7 months. 7 months of walking, of hardship, of watching the landscape change from the green forests of the south to the Great Plains, to the Rocky Mountains, to the desert of Utah. By the time they arrive in Salt Lake City in late 1848, Biddy has traversed half a continent on foot. She's proven her toughness, her resilience, her absolute determination to survive for the sake of her children. The Mormon community in Utah is trying to establish itself, building farms and towns in territory that is harsh and unforgiving. Robert Smith settles his family and his enslaved people, and for several years they live in Utah. But Smith is restless, and California, recently acquired from Mexico after the Mexican-American War, is experiencing a gold rush. Thousands of people are flooding into California hoping to strike it rich. Smith decides to relocate again, and in 1851, he moves his household to San Bernardino, California, where the Mormon Church is establishing a settlement. This move changes everything for Biddy. California is technically a free state. California entered the Union in 1850 as part of the Compromise of 1850, and the state constitution prohibits slavery. But this prohibition is not well enforced, especially in Southern California, where many settlers come from slaveholding states and bring enslaved people with them. Simply ignoring the law, Robert Smith brings Biddy and her daughters and his other enslaved people to California and continues to treat them as slaves, keeping them isolated from the free black community in Los Angeles, preventing them from learning about California law. For several years, this continues. Biddy works as a midwife and nurse, building a reputation in the growing community for her healing skills. She delivers babies for white families, for Hispanic families, for the small black community. She treats illnesses with her herbal remedies. People know her name and respect her abilities, but she's still enslaved, still legally owned by Robert Smith, despite California law. Then in 1856, Robert Smith makes a decision that will prove to be his downfall. He decides to move again, this time to Texas, a slave state where his ownership of Biddy and the others will be secure. He begins preparing for the journey, purchasing supplies, planning the route, but someone in the free black community of Los Angeles hears about Smith's plans. They realize that if Smith takes these people to Texas, they'll be permanently enslaved with no hope of freedom. So they act. The free black community contacts the Los Angeles County Sheriff and reports that Robert Smith is illegally holding people in slavery and is planning to take them out of California. The sheriff investigates and discovers that Smith does indeed have enslaved people in his household. The sheriff intervenes, preventing Smith from leaving California and essentially placing Biddy and her family in protective custody while the legal situation is resolved. This leads to one of the most important legal cases in early California history. In January 1856, the case is brought before Judge Benjamin Hayes in Los Angeles. The legal question is straightforward. Are Biddy Mason and her daughters free under California law? Or does Robert Smith's claim of ownership supersede state law? Robert Smith argues that he brought these people to California temporarily, that he's been a resident of Utah, not California, and that therefore California's prohibition on slavery doesn't apply to him. He claims ownership of Biddy and her children based on Mississippi law, and demands the right to take his property to Texas. Biddy, who cannot read or write, who has spent her entire life enslaved, stands in that courtroom fighting for her freedom and her children's freedom. She has help from the free black community and from sympathetic white citizens who testify on her behalf. The trial is not long, but it must feel like an eternity to Biddy. Her entire future and her children's futures hang in the balance. If the judge rules in Smith's favor, they'll be taken to Texas and enslaved forever. If the judge rules in her favor, they'll be free for the first time in their lives. On January 19, 1856, Judge Benjamin Hayes issues his ruling. He finds that Robert Smith has been a resident of California for several years, that California law prohibits slavery, and that therefore Biddy Mason and her daughters are free. They are not, and cannot be Smith's property. The judge's decision is unambiguous and powerful. He writes that Biddy and her family are entitled to their freedom, and that Smith has no claim on them. Biddy Mason, at age 37, becomes legally free for the first time in her life. Her daughters are free. The chains of slavery, legal if not physical, are broken. But freedom brings new challenges. Biddy is free, but she has no money, no property, no formal education. She needs to support herself and her 3 daughters in a society that offers limited opportunities to black women. Many newly freed people struggle in these circumstances, trapped in poverty because they lack resources and face discrimination. But Biddy has something valuable: her skills as a midwife and nurse. The reputation she built while enslaved now becomes the foundation of her freedom. Biddy finds work as a nurse and midwife, and her services are in high demand. Los Angeles in the 1850s and 60s is a rough frontier town, growing rapidly with the California gold rush and the expansion of American settlement. There are few trained doctors, and those who exist often don't serve poor people or people of color. Biddy becomes essential to the community's health. She delivers babies, treats illnesses, cares for the injured. She works for a prominent physician, Dr. John Strother Griffin, who recognizes her abilities and pays her a wage of $2.50 per day, which is an excellent wage for a woman in the 1850s. Especially a black woman. Biddy is meticulous about saving money. She lives frugally, spending as little as possible, putting aside every penny she can. She's thinking not just about survival, but about building something permanent, something that can provide security for her and her daughters, and eventually her grandchildren. She's also deeply committed to her community and to her faith. Biddy helps establish the first African Methodist Episcopal Church in Los Angeles in 1872, which becomes the center of the black community in the city. She's one of the founding members and a major financial supporter. The church is not just a place of worship, but a community center, a place where black Angelenos can gather, support each other, organize, and build institutions in a society that discriminates against them. But Biddy's most extraordinary achievement is still ahead. In 1866, just 10 years after winning her freedom, Biddy purchases her first piece of property. She buys land on Spring Street in what is now downtown Los Angeles for $250. This might not sound like much, but for a formerly enslaved woman with no formal education to accumulate $250 in savings and then invest it in real estate is extraordinary. Most people in Biddy's circumstances would spend their earnings on immediate needs, on housing and food and clothing. Biddy is thinking long-term, thinking about building wealth that can appreciate, that can provide income, that can be passed down to her children. This first purchase is the beginning of what will become a substantial real estate empire. Biddy continues to work as a nurse and midwife, continues to save, and continues to buy property. Los Angeles is growing rapidly during this period. What was a small frontier town is becoming a significant city. Real estate values are increasing. Biddy, with no formal education, with no training in business or finance, somehow understands this. She's buying property in areas that will become valuable. She's holding onto her land while values increase. She's reinvesting her rental income into more property. By the 1880s, Biddy Mason owns multiple properties in downtown Los Angeles. Her holdings are worth thousands of dollars, making her one of the wealthiest women in the city, regardless of race. By the time of her death in 1891, her estate is valued at approximately $300,000, which would be equivalent to nearly $10 million today. Think about that trajectory, from enslaved woman walking 1,700 miles barefoot across the frontier to millionaire landowner in less than 40 years. This is not just a rags to riches story. This is a testament to extraordinary intelligence, discipline, and strategic thinking. But Biddy doesn't hoard her wealth. She becomes known throughout Los Angeles as the mother of charity. She visits prisoners in jail, bringing them food and comfort. She provides food and financial assistance to poor families, both black and white. During floods that devastate parts of Los Angeles, Biddy opens her home to displaced families. She helps establish schools and child care facilities for working families. She's a major financial supporter of charitable institutions. Throughout the city, Biddy understands something profound. Wealth brings responsibility. She's been given opportunities that most black people of her era never get, and she uses those opportunities not just for personal enrichment, but for community uplift. Every person she helps, every family she feeds, every prisoner she visits, is an act of resistance against the dehumanization of slavery. Biddy is proving through her actions that black people are not just capable of achieving success, but are generous, moral, community-minded citizens who contribute to the broader society. In an era when white supremacist ideology claims that black people are naturally inferior and incapable of civilization, Biddy Mason is living proof that these claims are lies. She's wealthier than most white people in Los Angeles. She's more generous than most white philanthropists. She's building institutions that serve the entire community. How do racist ideologies survive in the face of examples like Biddy Mason? They survive by ignoring those examples, by not teaching about them, by erasing them from history. Biddy's family flourishes. Her daughters marry and have children. Her grandchildren grow up in freedom, with opportunities Biddy could only dream of during her enslaved childhood. Some of her descendants become teachers, business owners, community leaders. The freedom that Biddy fought for in Judge Hayes's courtroom ripples forward through generations, changing the trajectory of her entire family line. Biddy Mason dies on January 15, 1891, at age 72. Her funeral is attended by hundreds of people, both black and white, from all social classes. She's mourned as a pillar of the Los Angeles community, as someone who made the city better through her generosity and service. Newspapers cover her death, recognizing her contributions. But then, like so many black historical figures, Biddy begins to fade from memory. As the 20th century progresses, as Los Angeles grows from a medium-sized city into one of the great metropolitan areas of the world, Biddy's story is largely forgotten. The buildings she owned are torn down or renovated. with no acknowledgement of who built them. The church she helped found continues, but new generations don't know her name. The charitable work she pioneered is continued by others who don't know they're following in her footsteps. Biddy Mason becomes a footnote, if she's mentioned at all, in the history of Los Angeles. This erasure is not accidental. The dominant narrative of Los Angeles, of California, of the American West, is a narrative of white pioneers taming the frontier, building civilization, creating prosperity through hard work and ingenuity. Black contributions to this story complicate that narrative. If a formerly enslaved woman with no formal education could become one of the wealthiest landowners in Los Angeles, if she could demonstrate business acumen that rivaled or exceeded that of educated white businessmen, if she could be more generous and community-minded than most white philanthropists, then what does that say about the racial hierarchies that American society was built on? It says they're false. It says that the limitations placed on black people were never about inherent capability, but always about systemic oppression designed to prevent black achievement. So the easiest thing to do is simply not talk about Biddy Mason, to let her fade from memory, to teach the history of Los Angeles without mentioning one of its most important founders. But history has a way of resurfacing. In the late 20th century, historians and community activists began to recover Biddy's story. Research was conducted, documents were uncovered, descendants were interviewed. Slowly, Biddy Mason's extraordinary life was reconstructed and shared. In 1988, nearly a century after her death, the city of Los Angeles dedicated a memorial to Biddy Mason. A timeline and plaque were installed on Broadway between 3rd and 4th Streets, near the site of one of her properties. The memorial tells her story, recognizing her journey from slavery to freedom to prosperity, her work as a healer and midwife, her philanthropy and community service. In 1989, the city of Los Angeles declared November 16th as Biddy Mason Day. Schools began teaching about her. Books were written. Her story became part of the curriculum in California history classes. In 2009, Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa announced plans for Biddy Mason Park, a public space dedicated to her memory. These gestures of recognition are important, but they also highlight how long it took. Biddy died in 1891. The first memorial was installed in 1988. That's 97 years of erasure, nearly a century where her story was not told, where children growing up in Los Angeles learned the city's history without hearing about this extraordinary woman. How many other Biddy Masons are there? How many other black pioneers, entrepreneurs, activists, and community builders have been erased from local and national histories? We know that they exist because we keep discovering them when historians dig into archives and oral histories. But the dominant narrative, the story taught in textbooks and presented in museums, still largely centers white achievement and treats black achievement as exceptional rather than as a fundamental part of American history. Biddy's story matters for many reasons. First, it demonstrates the extraordinary obstacles that black people had to overcome to achieve anything. Biddy walked 1,700 miles. She learned healing skills from other enslaved women because formal medical education was closed to her. She worked for a decade after winning her freedom before she could purchase her first piece of property. Every step of her journey required superhuman effort, resilience, and determination. And, even then, she needed some luck, needed Judge Hayes to rule in her favor, needed to be in a place and time where a black woman could own property at all. Second, Biddy's story reveals the diversity of the American West and the essential contributions of black people to its development. The mythology of the West, as presented in countless films and books, is overwhelmingly white. Cowboys are white. Pioneers are white. The people who built the great Western cities are white. But the reality is very different. The West was built by people of all races. Black people were cowboys, pioneers, miners, business owners, landowners. They established churches, schools, and charitable institutions. They were there from the beginning, contributing to every aspect of Western development. Biddy Mason is one example, but she represents thousands of other Black pioneers whose stories have been erased or minimized. Third, Biddy's business acumen and wealth accumulation challenge racist narratives about Black financial capability. Even today, there are persistent myths that Black people are somehow naturally bad with money, that poverty in Black communities reflects cultural failings rather than systemic barriers. Biddy's life destroys these myths. With no formal education, with no inheritance, starting with literally nothing after winning her freedom, Biddy built a fortune through strategic real estate investment. She saved when others spent. She invested when others consumed. She took calculated risks that paid off. This is not luck. This is intelligence, discipline, and business sense of the highest order. If Biddy could do this in the 1860s and 70s, facing discrimination at every turn, what might Black people achieve in a truly equal economic system? Fourth, Biddy's philanthropy and community service model a kind of success that's about more than personal enrichment. She could have simply accumulated wealth and lived comfortably. Instead, she used her resources to lift up her entire community. She fed the hungry, visited prisoners, supported institutions that served everyone regardless of race. This is leadership. This is using privilege and resources to create opportunity for others. This is understanding that individual success means little if the community remains oppressed. Biddy's example should be taught not just in history classes, but in business schools, in courses on philanthropy, in discussions of ethical leadership. Fifth, Biddy's story as a midwife and healer highlights the crucial role of Black women in healthcare, particularly in communities that were underserved or ignored by formal medical systems. The healing knowledge that Biddy possessed, passed down through generations of African and African American women, saved lives. In an era before modern medicine, before antibiotics and antiseptic surgery, the knowledge of how to treat illnesses with herbs, how to assist in difficult births, how to care for the sick, was essential. Black women like Biddy were healthcare providers for their communities, and their contributions should be recognized as an important part of medical history. These traditions of healing, these bodies of knowledge, are often dismissed as folk medicine or superstition, but they worked. They kept people alive, and they represent sophisticated understanding of human health and plant medicine that deserves respect. Before I close, I want you to imagine something. Imagine you're Biddy Mason. In 1856, standing in that Los Angeles courtroom, you're 37 years old. You've been enslaved your entire life. You've walked 1,700 miles across the frontier. You've survived things that would break most people. And now, your freedom and your children's freedom depend on what a white judge decides. You have no power, no resources, no legal training. The man who claims to own you is there with his lawyer, arguing that you're his property. What are you feeling? Terror, hope, determination. And then the judge rules in your favor. You're free. For the first time in your life, you're free. What do you do with that freedom? Some people would simply try to survive, would work and live quietly, grateful to no longer be enslaved. But Biddy doesn't just survive. She thrives. She builds wealth. She establishes institutions. She becomes a pillar of her community. She proves that the only thing holding Black people back was slavery itself, that given freedom and opportunity, Black people could achieve anything. That's not just an individual success story. That's a refutation of the entire ideology of white supremacy. If this story inspired you, if it made you angry that Biddy Mason's name isn't known by every American, if it made you think about all the other Black women whose contributions to American history have been erased, then I need you to act right now. Hit that like button to help this video reach more people who need to hear Biddy Mason's story. Subscribe to Crowned Black Heroes and turn on notifications, because every week, we bring you these powerful stories of Black excellence that built America. And drop a comment below. Tell me what you think about Biddy Mason. Had you heard of her before this video? What other Black pioneers and entrepreneurs do you want to learn about? How do we make sure these stories become part of mainstream education rather than being forgotten? Let's build a community committed to recovering and celebrating the full truth of Black achievement in American history. Share this video everywhere. Make sure Biddy Mason's name is known. Make sure her example of resilience, intelligence, and generosity is recognized and celebrated. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for caring about historical truth, and for honoring the legacy of a woman who refused to be broken by slavery, who walked 1,700 miles with her children, who won her freedom in court, and who then built an empire and used it to serve her community. Biddy Mason deserves to be remembered as one of the great Americans, as a pioneer not just of Los Angeles, but of what's possible when Black people are given freedom and opportunity. Share her story, honor her legacy, and join me next time as we uncover another incredible story of Black excellence that history tried to erase. Until then, stay inspired, stay committed to truth, and keep fighting for a world where everyone's contributions are recognized and celebrated. Peace.